There's been a lot going on, and I've been struggling to articulate my thoughts about it. Two high profile murders in the span in a short amount of time. The first one was a young Ukrainian woman, a young Ukrainian refugee murdered on public transportation. The other one was the assassination of Charlie Kirk at a college speaking event. Both of these crimes were accompanied by very visceral footage. I guess the first thing I want to say is while I'm not super familiar with Charlie Kirk, I was very shocked, but I wouldn't say surprised by the very casual sociopathy in response to Charlie Kirk's death. And it's not just the casual disregard for life in the wake of such, again, very visceral, very horrendous footage that you would think would supersede sort of the animal part in your brain, the more like animal, tribal, political side of your brain, just sort of the maybe it's that people are too desensitized. Again, it's not just the sort of casual disregard for human life, it is the way in which they sort of perform. I've seen multiple compilations of TikTok videos of these people just it is an entirely sort of alien species to me. When you see how viscerally unpleasant and performative these people are, it's kind of like an aesthetic for these people, this kind of catty, malevolent glee. But then when there's not outright gloating, there's a lot of sort of equivocating from people who, at the very least, are able to comport themselves a little better. They have a little bit more impulse control. So, for instance, journalists, major publications, you see a lot of equivocating, a lot of, well, what happened was tragic, but there's still very much a sort of the ends justify the means attitude. The tweet on your screen right now is from Stephen King, whose brain has long been fried and who just, again, we've heard so much over the years about mis and disinformation, about how it's important that we have an authoritative media center so that people know what is true or not, so that people know how to think. And yet we have this guy whose brain is fried, just throwing things out there without apparently knowing whether it's true or not. This is a guy who's sort of shaped the American consciousness for decades. While you do see many on the left condemning the assassination, it doesn't ring very sincere when the whole rest of the operation is frothing at the mouth. These sort of creepy, celebratory TikTok demons, they seem more like the kind of unrestrained id of leftists as a whole. So while they might pretend to comport themselves with more decorum, inside they are a gloating, bloodthirsty ghoul. And on the one hand, I'm not saying that that's unique to leftists in particular, but it is the lying and the pretense that I think is especially malevolent. The entire aesthetic of modern progressivism is that it presents itself as sort of the moral superior. Here are the words you should say, here are the things you shouldn't say. It's all about empathy, right? It's all about channeling your empathy to make the world a better place, which is, of course, all a pretense. As many others have said, a lot of progressivism seems just to be a pretense for bullying. Many of these people, they are bullies at heart, but at the same time are sort of too timid to really assert themselves, and so they have been given this venue to act like unrepentant sociopaths. The other thing that I keep thinking about is that neither of these two murders would have been possible without nonstop, unrelenting propaganda. These people have been raised in a land of make-believe. They don't believe in religion. They hate the idea of family. They probably hate their families. They don't believe in nations. They don't believe in culture. The only thing they really have to glom onto, the only thing that really organizes their perception of the world is media, both sort of the news media, social media, but also fiction, movies, and TV. This is ostensibly a media channel. I talk a lot about movies, and I've said this before, but it is becoming increasingly difficult for me to reconcile film or media as art and film and media as propaganda. What makes these sort of demonic leftists so dangerous, but which also makes them so sort of efficient, what's made them so politically effective for the last 10 years, is that their brains are broken. The part of the brain which processes logic or cause and effect is broken. Throughout our entire lives, we learn to rationalize cause and effect, to logic our way through a situation. We say to ourselves, if we take A and we add B, you're more than likely going to get C. Whereas the modern leftist bug person, they are presented with the equation of, well, we have A, here's B. They've been trained to say, well, B doesn't exist, or we can't acknowledge B because that's sexist or racist. So what media does, what propaganda does, is it tries to smooth over those gaps in logic. The job of the media is to try and sort of reconcile all these brain-broken gaps in reasoning. So for instance, crime in the real world, it might look a certain way. You might see a mugshot come across your TV screen, and the perpetrator, again and again, might look a certain way. Well, what you do in the media is, because that is an inconvenient truth, you then make numerous movies where the perpetrator of similar crimes, they look, let's just say, completely different than they do in the real world. It's these narratives, it's reiterating these same narratives over and over again that aid in creating policy. Maybe policies, maybe it's the sort of policy that lets a repeat offender out of jail 14 times. It's this policy which then leads to this repeat offender committing a heinous crime on public transportation. We have an increasing number of movies and television shows which are all about the dangers of white, right-wing political violence, and yet as these movies and television shows are released, we are seeing real-world events unfold in the news that, again, where the perpetrator does not quite resemble the demographics we are most warned about in these movies and TV shows. You've got all these artists, you've got all these writers and directors and actors aggrandizing themselves as these sort of bold truth tellers. You'll read all these platitudes about how, this is a timely story. This is a story that's more relevant now than ever. And yet, more often than not, they seem less concerned with the truth than creating a version of the truth that they would like to live in. It's then this sort of nonstop, all-encompassing propaganda that encourages these TikTok sociopaths to behave the way that they do. Again, they've created this environment where to them, the ends justify the means. In their minds, they've been forced into this sort of fight or flight scenario. They are epic freedom fighters. They're in Star Wars. They're in, well, it used to be Harry Potter, but we don't talk about Harry Potter anymore. But they are so marinated in this media paradigm that they imagine themselves as some sort of superhero freedom fighter. Anyway, some of this stuff I'll probably end up elaborating on at some point in a longer, more scripted video. I just wanted to, put something out there. I can't just go from talking about Tombstone or whatever and then just move on to something else. Anyway, okay, goodbye.